Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's Grit Championship for Race 6 from the DGT Gardens. Let's take a quick look at the current championship standings after 5 races. Steve F1 leading the way by 2 points ahead of Demon R. Mitch in 3rd place, however he's unable to race today, so Conrad in 4th has got a great chance of catching him. SGP in 5th is only 3 behind Conrad. Dave Harp sits in 6th place, 51 points for him, and he's 9 ahead of Artpal in 7th, who's got a 4-point gap back to Fluffy in 8th, but Fluffy is still recovering from those dirty deeds he's been getting up to, where he's busted his ribs. Hopefully you get better soon, Fluffy, because Gary's hunting you down. He's in 9th and he's only 5 points behind you. Twilight 1 point behind Gary. Jason sits in 11th, also he's unable to race today, didn't get the update done in time. Hey, 12th on 25 points. Jimmy, he's only 10 behind him. Then we've got Tyler, Rich Blues, SRI and Bunsell. Bunsel's got a good chance of jumping SRI because he too is unable to race today. Hey, let's take a look at the qualifying order then, and Steve F1 on the timings as well. A 119.069, a good 3/10 quicker than Demon R in 2nd place. SGP and Conrad barely anything between those two, they are on row 2. David Harper and Twilight will start on row 3, while Artpal and Bunsell line up on row 4. Jimmy and Gary, they're going to line up on row 5, and Hay and Rich Blues will start on row 6. And those two choosing not to set a lap time in qualifying. As I mentioned, a few drivers away. Jason was able to get the update done. SRI feeling unwell. Mitch is unwell. And Jason didn't get his update done in time. I think I've just said that, but he may still be doing his update. And yeah, Fluffy, as we know, is injured. Anyway, let's hand over to the commentators. And joining me on commentary for this race at the Dragontail Gardens, it's Steve. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm alright. I'm just hoping that Daenerys Targaryen doesn't come chasing after us. The woman from Game of Thrones.
I don't know either.
Don't tell me you've not watched it. Oh my goodness me.
No.
Right, okay, you need to watch Game of Thrones. So here we go then. Steve F1 on pole position. Demon R in 2nd place. The championship rivals ready to go at it at the DGT Seaside. SGP is right behind Steve F1. Who's going to get the best of starts? Well, we're about to find out as away they go. And it looks like Steve F1 has had a decent start. Connor's lost a bit of ground. And yeah, Demon R slotting in behind Steve F1 up to turn 1.
Yeah, and Mitch not in this race, unfortunately. We hope he's well. That's really made it a good opportunity today for Steve F1 and Demon R in the championship, and they're 1st and 2nd. But they've got SGP's hit those evil sausage curbs who actually came, but he's got away with it.
Yeah, he likes the sausage, but the sausage didn't like him. Then get off me. So yeah, you're right, Mitch, unfortunately unable to race today. Demon R closing in on Steve F1, but Conrad closing in on Demon R. I don't know if you gave him a little bit of a tag there. I think he may have done. So it looks like Conrad's backed out a little bit, and hey, around he goes on the exit of the hairpin. It is probably the 2nd of the most difficult corners at the start of the lap anyway. Oh, Demon R running a little bit wide, got to be careful of that. Steve, try and tell us, if you can, a little bit about the nature of the DGT Gardens, if you will, and the difficulties that some of the drivers may face.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic track for this car in terms of it's fast and flowing, but because there's a few slow corners with kind of that open up on the exits, it's so easy to lose the cars. We've seen already out the hairpin, out of this corner here as well. It's so easy just to light the rear up and spin. And there's also a couple of corners with curbs where if you just take too much curb again, the rears are going to lose traction and you're going to spin. So it's a really nice track, but a very punishing one as well.
Definitely. Heading then, as we see Rich and now Conrad into the chicane, which I've decided to name the Flip Flap Fluffy. It's got 3 parts, so it's the Flip Flap Fluffy, because there's a good chance that most people as they're going through it are going to be going which is what Fluffy does, which is what made me think of giving it that name. Conrad having another look at Demon R, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do it up the inside there. The nature of that hairpin, Steve, we've seen one car spin as you mentioned, but the outside line is a much faster line. We've seen in practice people trying to go for a switchback and it not working.
I wonder where you go with that fluffy reference. I thought it was going to be some kind of bike reference there,
No.
but yeah, obviously we hope he's well as well after his biking escapades. But yeah, that hairpin is very tricky. You always want to try and get a good exit from there, but if you just get on the power too early, you're going to spin. And oh, look at this! Tempty, he's got a good run up the inside here as Hay, and he's got Jimmy there.
That he has. Davey Hart got a little bit wide as well, but got away with it as they head into the final couple of corners. And Steve F1 still leading the way then as Twilight's heading into the pits. That's a very early pit stop. I'm not too sure why he'd pit this early on.
Yeah, strange one, unless he just wants to get into clear air for a bit and get into a bit of a rhythm. And get away from the pack and then just build his race from there maybe, but yeah, there's no kind of strategic advantage at the moment to pitting this early.
Well, yeah, we've seen a couple of different lines going through the flip flap fluffy there, or we could call it the triple F, or we so I just thought it was something else. F him. So a few different lines being used through that chicane. I think some drivers are avoiding the sausage curves, others are straddling it, and some may be clunking them as Hay getting a little bit too much curve there. That'll unsettle him as these guys are making their way through this left-hander, which I've decided to call it the heart pit because he ends up buried there a lot. And then we're into another corner which people reference it as it being a lot like Turkey's Turn 8, but I've decided we'll call it Chickeny.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's got like 3 or 4 apexes to it, and it's just about being patient. It's all about getting a good exit through there rather than throwing it in. The temptation to throw it in with a lot of speed, but you want to be trying to get a good exit. And this is another fantastic corner on this track. Again, it's just risk and reward through there.
Yeah.
And this double chicane, as you say, some people straddle it. It's quicker to do that, but then it's probably easier to be more. There you go, and that's the risk. If you try and straddle it and you hit the curbs, you're going round. Yeah,
definitely. Conrad very unlucky there, but I do know Conrad has come into this race with no practice other than the bit of time spent at the track just before the race, so not had a chance to really... Oh, Hayes in the barrier. So Dave the Harp. Okay, something must have happened there then between Hay and Dave the Harp. So Dave the Harp getting going again. Got it turned around quite nicely there. Hayes still and by the barrier. He's getting going now. Okay, that would suggest to me that an incident has happened there between Hay and Dave, and Hay may be thinking that it's his fault, therefore waiting for Dave to get going before he goes again. But that's a bit devastating for Dave the Harp now. Perhaps the only positive is that he's got a bit of clear track for a while, Steve, and he can focus on where he wants to put his car.
Yeah, this early in the race with boost available when you're at the back, you've still got plenty of opportunity to catch back up. So it's all is not lost for either of those two drivers. Oh, and that's SGP in from third after 4 laps. That's unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to start talking about strategies, and that's a very early pit stop for SGP there. I mean, from what we've seen in practice, a 2-stop is very comfortably doable. A 1-stop can be done, but it's at a risk of losing about 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap on pace. So it's kind of touch and go as to what drivers may do. Someone like SGP and Twilight, who have already pitted, there's no way they're doing a 1-stop. They're on a 2-stop, definitely. The only thing I can think is that maybe they're looking at the field at the moment and thinking there's a bit of space I can drop into and get a bit of boost now. Was Conrad having a look at the inside of Gary not fighting that one too hard, which is probably wise, but we're seeing that the speed is there for the car on the outside, but Gary's going to be hung out to dry a little bit now when you get to the next left-hander. So maybe for SGP and Twilight it's a bit about the boost as well, but I mean SGP though has come out right behind Bunsell, so I don't think that's worked.
No, but it's interesting because we one or two drivers are absent. So we've only got 12 rather than 16 drivers, so maybe that's why they're thinking there's going to be less traffic to have to negotiate. But yeah, SGP's got to get on with it. He can't afford to get held up for too long, otherwise you lose the effect to the undercut.
Yeah, they've got the benefit of the boost and all of that. And if he's pitted to try and get a big undercut on the leaders, I don't think it's going to have worked unless he can get past him. He's making a move past Jimmy at the moment. moment, but Jimmy won't mind that. He'll have it in lean, I'm sure. I keep telling them not to. Keep it in rich and you can still save more fuel. And if you're in lean, Bunsel's gone a bit wide though. That'll give SGP a little bit of a sniff up the inside, and he's going to go for it. Is he yet? Bunsel gives him the room. Jimmy looking sneaky in the background as well. Very different lines, 4 different lines through the chicanes there, and to be fair, Jimmy's worked well for him.
That's it. If you're just smooth and consistent through there, it's the best way. And Rich is joining the party now. He's having a look up the inside of his good mate Jimmy, and he's made it. Good move.
Yeah, he has. SGP still can't get past Bunsel though, so this is definitely costing SGP a little bit of time. We won't know exactly how much until we see he's been past the start-finish line. But Bunsel's gone. He's in the barrier.
Oh, has he touched that curb, has he? Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a few spinners through there in this race. Yeah. Now Jimmy and Rich continuing their battle. Jimmy's fancying a look back, and there's Dave the Arp after his early spin. He's caught back up now, and he's wasting no time. He's straight past Jimmy there.
And having a look up the inside of Rich as well. Both of them run a little bit wide. Jimmy's got the inside line, but Dave's got the speed around the outside. So Dave's recovered. I mean, I mentioned that he gets a bit of free air. He hasn't got that now, but he has recovered quite nicely. I just want to mention though, for a 2-stop strategy, what we're looking at, probably someone pitting. Well, 10 and 10 would be the obvious one. Oh, has Jimmy got a little bit wide there? But I wouldn't be surprised if we see drivers offset that a little bit to try and get some kind of undercut. For example, Demon R, maybe look at an undercut on Steve F1, Artpal on Demon R, and so on. I mean, Artpal's running in 3rd at the moment. He's broke away from these guys, so he'll be quite happy. But having said that, we've got Twilight here who's pitted already, Dave the Harp who's been in a crash already, and and Bunsel who is recovering as well. So I think these guys in the pack at the moment are a little bit offset, really, Steve, as to where they would perhaps normally be.
Yeah, because a few people have pitted. It's enabling a few other drivers who may be trying a longer strategy to get up the order there. So it's difficult to know what the true picture is with some of these guys at the moment because of the different strategies.
Demon R's into the pits, by the way, so from 2nd place.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he looks like he's clearly going for an undercut there, and he had 44% of fuel on his way into the pits. So what would that mean? That leaves 23 laps. So to split that with an 11 and a 12 maybe. Where's he going to come out? Is he ahead of SGP? Yes, he is, just ahead of SGP, but SGP is going to go around him. So Demon R is going to be behind SGP. So SGP pitting when he did, it's not gained him loads, but it's gained him enough to jump ahead of Demon R, which could put SGP back into the fight for the win here then, surprising.
Yeah, but when did SGP pit? Was it 3-4 laps ago? You'd expect him to be many seconds up the road of Demon R, so that undercut hasn't really worked for him at all. He's got gained track position, but I'm sure he would have been hoping to gain a lot more time than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Normally, with if you're going to get a 3 or 4 lap undercut, you'd probably be expecting about 12 to 18 seconds.
Yeah. So. It'll be interesting to see now for Demon R whether this undercut works, because Steve F1, he stayed out. We don't know yet if he's going to be 1 or 2 stopping. And Artpal into the pits from 2nd. He's having a good run so far. Yeah,
that suggests as well for him it's a 2-stop strategy. Conrad's continued on. Artpal did use a lot more fuel than Demon R, but there's no hardship in that. So you don't run out like a few of them did at the Ovalish last time out. Gary, though, he's leading the pack at the moment. Currently he's sitting in 3rd place, and he hasn't pitted yet that I know of. So it's an interesting scenario here where Gary's getting lighter on fuel, and he's got a lot less fuel on board than the likes of SGP and Demon R. So they might find it a little bit difficult to get past Gary here.
Yeah, this car's very sensitive to fuel loads. It's there is definitely a clear pace advantage and straight line speed advantage with the light fuel. But SGP's made it work. He's got to be inside of Gary now. Nice move, but he's lost it. He's lost control and that's
places. Well, I mean, It's easily done at that hairpin. We've mentioned it already. I want to mention as well that Gary and Twilight are actually battling in the championship at the moment. Gary's only 1 point ahead of Twilight. So for Gary, this is actually a very important phase of the race. As we're having a look now at Demon R, who's behind Gary. Dave Hart just ahead of SGP. And what's Davey Hart's got? Hang on a minute. Is Demon R slowing down there? It looks like, he's let David Harp and SGP through, or has he? Yeah, he has.
Interesting. What was their potential contacts earlier in the lap when SGP lost it? Does he think maybe there's been contact, or
possibly? I mean, I suppose it's possible that he may have felt that he hit Gary, and Gary tagged SGP, and that's what sent him a little way around. I mean, what we'll say is, whether he did or not. Oh, Davey Hart, no! No! Oh, say hello to Fluffy in the flip-flap Fluffy. It's not easy to say that, but I can't say it if I've had a few beers. But yeah, what I will say is, I mean, we mentioned about Demon Arm, will he suffer with the undercut? He will now. But at the same time, whether he did make contact or not, fair play to him. He's took that basically decision. Bunso off in the background, so David R's taken that decision of, someone else has been off in the gravel there. I saw a big puff of dust. I think it may have been no, that was in the background. I don't know, maybe it was formerly Gary, it could have been. I'm not too sure. I think I'm going a bit dizzy, really. I'm still suffering the effects of the ovalish from last week. Conrad into the pits.
But look at these lap times from SGP and Demon R. They're in the 23s. If they want to undercut Steve F1, that's not fast enough.
No. Well, I mean, what's the pace is Steve F1 going to be doing? I mean, to be fair, Steve F1 hasn't stopped yet. As SGP making the move on Gary down in towards turn 1. This has been coming for a while. Steve F1's basically got a choice now to stop like the rest of them, or see if he can squeeze a one stop out of it. But what kind of pace do you think Steve F1's going to be doing at the moment?
Well, I think light fuel is probably either low 20s or high 19s. We haven't seen his pace, but that's from practice. That's what drivers were doing on a low fuel load. So if they're doing 23s, they're potentially losing several seconds to Steve F1. Yeah,
losing 3 seconds a lap instead of gaining up to 6 seconds a lap. That's a massive factor in the race. It was Conrad making the move on Bunsell. Bunsell saw it coming, and I was going to say went for the wise, cautious approach, and then absolutely planted the throttle. It nearly worked for him. He also nearly went sideways. So. You know, I think if I was Steve F1 at this moment in time, I'd be keeping an eye on that gap now to SGP, who was already pitted. Because, I mean, for Steve F1, look at the lap times, 20.2s, 20.3s, consistently 20.2s and 3s. If I'm Steve F1, I'd be sat there thinking, you know what, I may be able to get a big enough gap that I can lift and coast enough to get a one stop out of this, because everybody else has got to stop again.
Yeah, he can afford to save fuel now and make that work with that kind of gap. So he's in a really good position now. Demon R finally getting past Gary. Isn't it? Gary's not giving this one up. Fair plays.
He's going for a switchback as well. Demon R's trying to squeeze him. You know what? Gary's having an absolutely brilliant race here at the moment. I don't know if he's going to be able to make the move up the inside into the hairpin because the tyre line is awful as Rich gets out of shape in the background. Gary slowing down nicely for the corner. And you know what? I actually spoke to Gary recently from the previous racing. I like what Gary did there. Then he got the car slowed down enough to make the corner safely. Unfortunately, it's meant that he's lost the position, but he's driving the right way, and I like that. If he'd have gone in there any faster, chances are there would have been contact, and obviously that's what we like to see it, but it's, at the same time, it's not what the league want to see. Conrad under pressure from Rich Blues, who gets a little bit squirrely.
Yeah, I like what I saw from Gary the previous corner as well. It's not always about the way in, isn't it? It's often about the way out, and he almost got that run by getting a better exit than Demon on the previous corner. So great stint. If that's Gary's first stop, really good stint from him there. Finally makes his stop, and Yeah, that's put Twilight up into 4th, I think, now.
Yes, you could be right, as Jimmy's closing in on the back of Rich. We saw these two battling earlier on, and I mean, Jimmy and Rich have had a bit of a tough fight in the championship, really, with Rich Blues being down in 14th on 13 points. Jimmy's a bit ahead of him on 15 points, so only 2 between them. Oh, who was that was off? I wasn't looking at the screen.
I didn't see either.
Oh, it might
unfortunately.
Might have been Jimmy getting a bit sideways as Conrad making the move on Art Pal. So these two have both pitted. They're fighting for position at the moment. But to be honest, I think it'd be wise for Art Pal and Conrad to kind of work together a little bit here in a way. Because we know that Conrad's got pace and we know that Art Pal is still quite new, so I don't think it'd benefit Art Pal to attack Conrad, whereas if he just uses him as a slipstream, save a bit of fuel, benefit from the booster being in 6th place, I think overall Art Pal can gain. But he's having a look. Fair enough, Conrad's going defensive though.
Yeah, it's a good point. Because I was going to say Connor's a good driver to follow because you know he's got pace, but it's not good if you follow him off the track or anything like that. But it's a good point. Normally, if it's a quick driver, you're better off just following them and just letting them pull you along, and you can make a break to the pack, to the gap to the pack by doing that.
Yeah, it's not easy to say that, is it?
No.
I mean, no!
After all that, we've killed him. He's in the gravel, and that's all the way to the back. Oh, no, spun again, coming back on.
Well, interestingly, I had a chat with Art Pal recently, and he was saying that with him being quite new to GT Sport, obviously there's a lot of things that he's having to learn very quickly, and on the track, most of it's going very well. One of the things that he's struggling with a little bit is when he has an off, getting going again. He's finding it a little difficult. I'm sure you've experienced it as well, Steve. Every now and again, you try and get going again, and the car spins on you. And it's those kind of things that the kind of struggling that I know he's struggling with at the moment. But again, I mean, for some drivers, we saw Dave the Arc do a nice little spin around earlier to get facing the right direction again. That's something that is actually worth practicing at times. So sometimes in practice sessions or when we're having random nights, Jimmy drifting around the final corners. I was going to say sometimes you might see people doing just sitting there doing donuts, but it's about being able to control the cars. Rich Blues pits for the first time, I believe, at the end of lap 14. If he's going for a one-stop, he may have to. Well, hopefully he'll realise he's got 16 laps to go and not 15. Otherwise, he could find himself being a lap short.
Yeah, he's going to need to fuel. If he's going to get to the end, he's going to have to fuel save a bit more in this second stint. I think 16 is right at the limit of. It's going to be tough to make that one work, I think, but it might just be doable. But you're right. I think probably yourself and me as well would admit that doing a bit of rallying and off-roading helps with that kind of thing about car control and when the car slides, being able to react to it. So yeah, just sometimes messing around and doing a bit of off-road stuff can actually help with when you get to the track into these league races.
Definitely. Steve F1 is into the pits, so he has managed to eke his fuel out into a one-stop scenario. SGP, we saw him pit, I think after lap 4 or 5, I think it was. So he's going to take he's not going to take the lead of the race. He's going to go into the pits.
Interestingly.
Yeah, I'm a bit baffled with that one. Demon R, though, he's going to take the lead, is he? No, Steve F1 has come out in front of him. Just in front of him. Where is he? There he is. Oh, how close do you want it to be? Demon R straight away going up the inside. And Steve F1 spotted that one. I think, to be fair, though, Steve F1 coming out of the pits, their tyres could be cold. Full tank of fuel. Very different strategies for these guys. I mean, Steve F1 could have tried defending that, but if it had ended up badly, i.e. in that flip-flap fluffy, then any advantage he has could have gone.
Yeah, I think if Demon R was going to the end at that point, I think Steve F1 would have probably fought that one hard if it was for position, but he probably knew Demon R's and a light fuel load, there's no point trying to turn in, particularly on cold tyres. So
yeah, well, another thing as well, I mean, we talked a little bit as Hayes coming under pressure from Jimmy. We talked a little bit about whether Demon R will benefit from an undercut, and some may look at it and go, yes, he has. Oh no, Jimmy, he's into the hard pit, and SGP is going to have to make sure he can avoid him. He can, as we see Dave the Harp now making his way towards the hard pit. Oh, dipped a wheel there. Be careful, David. Don't go sideways.
Oh,
Gary's
off.
binned it. Yeah. He managed to not get in the way of Jimmy there. Yeah, Gary off in the chicken eat. And I will explain that one at some point. So yeah, Demon R is ahead, but Demon R pitted 10 laps ago. So
and bearing in mind he was right behind Steve F1 when he pitted as well, and when Steve F1 just pitted, it was more or less the same gap. So he didn't really gain anything in that stint.
Twilight got a little bit out of shape there on the exit of the flip flat fluffy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in a normal scenario, we would have expected Demon R to have benefited from the boost enough to have been multiple seconds ahead, way ahead of Steve F1, but that clearly hasn't worked, which now has put a very different dynamic on the lead of the race, which we'll get into in a moment as we're having a look at Hay on the back of SGP. So SGP has made his stop once again, doing I don't know what strategy, but we know that he can be good on his fuel, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to try and go to the end from here. I mean, I'm trying to think about it. If you look at it, SGP pitted very early, went for that big undercut, it didn't work, so maybe changing to what would have been the one-stop strategy, pit at the end of 15, go to the end, he's not going to get stuck again, if you know what I mean. Whereas Demon R, he's going to have to pit again soon, and he's going to be potentially right in the thick of the traffic again. So yeah, maybe that's what SGP was thinking on that one. I don't know if Hay has pitted yet already, I'm not entirely sure, but I would guess this far into the race he must have done, as the field has gone quite spread out at the moment, but I think it will get punched back up again. I'm just wondering though, Steve, whether this track is one of those odd tracks where what you think would normally... Oh, SGP!
Oh no. Oh, that's... Sausage Scrub strikes again.
Yeah, he's flipped it, he's flapped it, he's fluffed it. Oh dear. That's gonna be a phrase on the next DGT merchandise, isn't it? Yeah, that reminds me actually, there is some new merch available, t-shirts, 2020 and 2021 tributes that say sorry I was on mute on them. Which has definitely been a story for us lot in 2020, especially you, Steve, I believe.
Yeah, that's a common phrase for me, that one.
Demon R into the pits. He could have gone for another lap. I mean, he had opened up quite a bit of a gap on Steve F1, but I'm guessing he's trying to look at perhaps where he's going to feed back in, because what he doesn't
possibly
is to be in the middle of this or behind this. So maybe it's a case of pit at that point as Jimmy heads into the pits. But again, it's a lot more difficult. Demon R on his way out of the pits, and he is just ahead of me. It's a lot more difficult now, isn't it, Steve, though, with the longer pit stop, because previously, if your pit stop was going to be 6-7 seconds, you could easily kind of work out whereabout you'd feed back in. But when it's 25 to 29 seconds, working out where you're going to feed back in is very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That is, it's there's a lot more risk you're going to come out now in the pack, and it's very difficult without having. There's not very much information for the drivers of the actual time gap, so it's very difficult to read. Looking at track maps, where you're going to fit back in.
Yeah, Hay and Russell side by side there, but managed to get through. I mean, I will mention, I do kind of mean that from sort of a lead. Oh, Conrod's closed in on Steve F1. He's took the lead. He ran a little bit wider though. You may have seen him, Conrad, closing in on the pack live cam there. But yeah, he definitely was closing in. But I think Conrod's on that two-stop strategy as well. So Steve F1 must now be in a sort of fuel save loads now, while he's got an absolutely massive gap over Demon R, and then he won't have to worry, he'll be able to pick up his pace if he needs to. And that's the advantage for Steve F1 in this race at the moment, that if we look at the track map, the leaders they've just gone through the flip flat fluffy, and Demon R is heading into turn 1 now. So Steve F1 has got that whole gap to save fuel, and if it's 15-ish seconds, that's a lot of fuel saving Steve F1 can do in that time.
Yeah, he's going to have to do some fuel saving to do the 15 laps. So I'm sure, looking at the fact he's not fought Demonar or Connor when they've gone past him, I think he's decided, as you say, just to save fuel early in the stint. And then if he needs to push at the end, he can do then.
Yeah, Bunsell got a little bit out of shape there. Okay, I was talking about the pit stops and the length of times. I was kind of talking about from the leader's perspective. It's difficult to know how far you're going to drop back in. If you're in the pack, it is very different though, because I think the way I would look at it is, if I was in the pack, if you pit, you're going to be at the back, but that's not a bad thing, because you're going to get loads of boost and you'll catch up within 4 laps. So if you're in the middle of the pack, you don't really have to worry too much about where you're going to feed back in, really. I think in the pack, you perhaps have to think more about, okay, when do the people around me pit? When are they pitting again? Because if they're going to be pitting in 5 laps, I want to be catching them up just as they pit, if that makes sense. Not always easy to do, but yeah, it is slightly different. If you're up in the front, Twilight now trying to make a move on Bonsall, I believe.
Yeah, I think that the strategies between frontrunners and the people in the pack are very different. It's difficult to save fuel in the pack as well, because you're just going to get swamped. So, yeah, they are very, very different approaches that work, I think, depending on where you are in the field.
Definitely. I mean, it's one of those things, we've talked about it before on commentary, that it seems to be easier to save fuel if you're leading than it does if you're in the pack. And sometimes it's like that with racing, as Bunsell still on the back of Twilight. Twilight's in a good position at the moment in his battle against Gary in the championship. Bunsell, let's see, where's Bunsell? Bunsell is currently bottom of the standings, unfortunately, on 5 points, but SRI isn't in the race today, so Bunsell may be able to leapfrog him if he can score 6 points or more, which would be pretty good. Art Powell is 9 points behind Dave the Harp, so Art Powell will be hoping he can catch up Dave the Harp, and I believe Dave the Harp is actually on a one-stop strategy here, so it'll be interesting to see what Dave can do for the remainder of the race as Art Powell closes in on Bunsell and Twilight. Conrad still leading the way. I'm just wondering, Steve, if you were Conrad, would you have pitted by now for your second stop?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's probably, you don't want to leave it too late into the race, but yeah, maybe he's thinking just if he can have a short stop at the end, he won't have to put a big amount of fuel in, so it'll be a short stop. So that's what he's thinking. Run on a light fuel load now, do some quick lap times, and then he might just come out close enough to the likes of Demon or SGP to be able to fight them at the end.
Possibly. Also, since he got past Steve F1, he's pulled away, so on that clock of the gap between himself and Steve F1, if that gap's getting bigger, it's going to make you want to keep going. As we do have a look at Conrad, and he's been comfortably in the low 20s and into the 19s. Is he going to be heading into the pit lane? Yes, he is. So he is going to have a shorter stop than most. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he still fills the tank just to be on the safe side. I think I'd probably do that, really. Where he comes out, though, could be very interesting, because Demon just come around the final corner. SGP are doing the same. How far back is Dave the Harp? He's come around the final corner now, so I think Conrad may feed in somewhere around about Dave the Harp. Or behind. There's SGP. Where's Dave the Harp? Is he going to come flying by? No, he's not going to be able to. So Conrad is in 4th place at the moment, and he can go and try and hunt down SGP, who, a little bit like Steve F1, may be having to save a bit of fuel because he's not been able to keep up with Demon since Demon come out of the pits.
Yeah, that's worked out nicely for kind of those quick laps out in front have really worked for him. He's come out ahead of the pack. So now, yeah, he could be a threat to SGP at the end of this race.
Definitely could. Gary having a look at Art Powell. Gary having had a very interesting race here at the Gardens. And Art Powell taking a very wide line through the hairpin there. He gets away with it just about. I mean, Twilight's just in front of these guys. And to be fair, Dave the Harp is not that far up the road. So this is a very interesting situation for these guys. Because we've said it so many times, if these guys fight, they will be safe. If these guys are patient, they could be in danger.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing you want at the end of the race is to be swamped and having to think about fuel. Yeah, you want to be able to push at the end of the race and not have to worry about fuel, otherwise you're going to be a sitting duck.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say though is Steve F1 has just gone through the flip-flap fluffy. Demon are headed through turn 1 now. The gap is, I think it's too big a gap to overcome, unfortunately. Artpal making the move on Gary, keeping the position, from Gary, as Twilight holds on to that 6th place at the moment as they made their way towards, towards the flip and the flap and the fluffy.
Oh,
no, Twilight, has he saved it? No, oh, yes, no. Oh dear.
I don't think you know which way he was going there.
I thought Artpal and Gary were kind of lucky there that, probably it's good that they were cautious through the chicane, because if they'd gone through there too quick, they may have collected Twilight. Twilight's now got hay behind him though as he tries to get his tyres cleaned up. But yeah, I mean, I think when Demonar made his second stop coming out where he did, I think the gap was about 18-19 seconds with 12 laps to go, so would have needed to have been just over a second a lap faster, but unfortunately I don't think that's quite worked. And maybe that's because, like I said, Steve F1, he does loads of fuel saving early on, but then if he gets to like 10 laps to go and he can bang in a much faster pace, then yeah, the gap's not going to come down as Artpal runs a little wide. Oh, Twilight and Hayes into the barrier. Oh dear.
That's one of the, it's that kind of corner, isn't it, where you take the wide line, but you're going to then be aware that someone might sneak up the inside of you there. Yeah. That was just unfortunate, classic kind of incident.
Oh, Conrad, no! Oh dear.
Oh, after it all worked out for him, and then he had such a good gap, but I think because he had a nice gap to the pack, he's lost one place, but it could have been a lot worse for him.
It definitely could. Looking at Steve F1 though, you know, look at that, right? Okay, so yeah, looking at the lap times, he dipped into the high 21s, the low 22s, back into the 21s. There was a lot of fuel saving there when there was a more than big enough gap. I think Steve F1's comfortable now to the end. I don't think he'll have to fuel save anymore. And given the size of the gap, I mean, it's the whole of the underground straight basically over Demon Ard. I don't think that's going to be catchable, not in 5 laps anyway.
No, I think Steve F1 probably now, if he needed to push at the end, I think he's got the fuel to do it now.
Yeah.
So I think it's just for him now, just try not to make any mistakes.
Hey, having a look up the inside of Twilight on this occasion, Twilight realised he was there, just about, and hey, a little squeeze.
Oh.
Just, hang on a minute. What does that say on his shark fin?
I don't. Whose car?
On Hayes.
On Hayes' shark fin.
Safety car. Maybe. Well, it is high vis. Maybe it's one of those crash test dummy cars.
Yeah, I don't normally associate Hayes cars being a safe car.
No. Gary might not either, as Hayes having a look up the inside, but to be fair, if you get it slowed down, it's a nice move. It is a nice move. Gary's he's nearly at the outside line, and Hay got a little bit twitchy, but they both live to fight another day. It's a good overtake that from Hay, to be fair. Artpal is now trying to break away from these guys. Artpal may have half a chance of catching Conrad. Gary's all out of shape. Up at the Harpies, they're now into the chicken eat, and yeah, brilliant corner this one, unless you get it wrong and it's absolutely evil. You'll be sitting duck on the straight as Gary very nearly lost it on the curb, but he's going to turn and need to overtake now.
Yeah, these two having a big ding-dong battle, and I believe Hay was getting on the radio telling the team to get Gary out of the way. He's holding me up. He's desperate to get forward. They're both having a right battle here. Look at Jimmy.
Yeah,
Jimmy's had a pretty quiet race, but he does tend to come good at the end of these races. So he's looks like he's running quite a smart race there.
Oh, Dave had a big wobble there. He survived it. You know what? That shows that Dave the Arp has had that incident many times in the chicane because he saved it. But to be fair, I think Dave being on the one stop, he's going to struggle to be able to perhaps keep up with Connor, who can push. As he did stop a lot later. Jimmy has made the move on Gary. These guys are caught up to Artpal. He did not, would not have wanted that. But Jimmy's making the move on Artpal, and he's made the move on Artpal. Nice overtake.
Oh yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, he's having a really good end to this race. Oh, whoa, that's a what opportunistic move from Artpal there. Lucky Jimmy saw him coming.
That's
not normally a place you associate with overtakes, but fair play. That was
I think Brundle would say that could have been a plane crash.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those corners though that it is a surprisingly. Oh, Hayes massively deep. It is a surprisingly quick corner. Has Hay got that back under control? Yes, he has just about. Yes, a surprisingly quick corner if you get the line right. If you get the line wrong, it's a horribly slow corner. So maybe Artpal just spotted enough from Jimmy's car to suggest that the move was on. I probably just went for it and got lucky. Either way, Jimmy, I don't think he'll be too pleased. I mean, he'll be with the overtake, really, there's no contact, but at the same time, in that corner, I'd be looking at that and going, what the hell? I'd be looking into that one, going, how have I just let you do that?
Exactly. And I'm looking at Rich Blues now. He's having a pretty solid run today, and but as I say, that Hayes just sent one up the inside, but Rich gains a position through it as well, or has he? Going side by side with Gary. Some good battles going on here.
You're going to have to be careful of Twilight, who's sneaking up behind. Oh, Rich Blues, a little bit of sliding. Oh, a little bit of nudging from Twilight from behind.
Oh, I thought Rich was going off there with that contact, but he got it. Yeah.
Oh, into the bar. No, Rich Blues into the barrier. Oh, no. And that's why they call him Rich Blues. I don't know why. Well, I know why I sang that, because I thought about it earlier today. But I didn't have a proper sound for it. But anyway, Gary holding off Twilight just about. Rich wasn't lucky there with tagging the wall. Very easily done. I think Rich kind of got caught out with going a little bit cautious, which is absolutely right. It's a fine thing to do. Twilight, not so cautious. Gave him a bit of a bump at the rear end. Oh, Gary giving the safety car a nudge. Oh, and another one. Oh, and now Twilight. This could end up massively disastrous. I think Gary may have backed out of it. Yeah, he has. He's backed out of it and let Hay and... Where's Hay gone? He's there! Oh, dear,
Was he collateral in all that wheel banging there? I thought I saw someone go flying off. It might have been Hay, unfortunately.
Yeah, Bunsell, that's a little bit deep. He manages to survive it, though. So Artpal still... Oh, no, Twilight! No! On the exit of the hairpin. It's such a late stage of the race as well. I've just seen as well on the track match someone's had a bit of an issue at the flip-flap fluffy. That might be Rich Blues, who is down at the back at the moment. But Artpal's
you know what? Is Rich Blues in fuel trouble here? Remember, he pitted on lap 14. He's suddenly a long way off the back of the field, if that's him. So has he got run short on fuel?
Maybe. Steve F1 has started the last lap of the race, by the way. So has second place Demon R. Third and fourth SGP and Conrad are now close, by the way. You may see that on the pack cam in moments. Bunsell making a move on Artpal down into turn one in the final lap. I don't think Artpal realised he was there. And up Bunsell goes, and now Gary's on the attack along with Jimmy. Can Bunsell get it slowed down? Can he survive the flip-flap and the fluff? He does. Just.
Yeah, is Bunsell going to get a good result here? As you said earlier, he's last in the championship, but he could be on for some good haul of points here if he can just hang on to the... but
don't look in your mirror.
Don't look in your mirror, Bunsell. Oh, no. Oh, who was that? It's gone flying off.
I think that was Jimmy. I think he may have been trying to take a bit of evasive there, but unfortunately did collect Bunsell, who's lost out to Artpal. As Steve F1 comes round the final corner for the final time. He's been on a different level today, a one-stop level. He's going to take the victory and extend his championship lead here at the Gardens. Dean Knott will take second place. I think he's going to be a little bit frustrated. He got the gap down a lot, but nowhere near enough. Lost out big time early on. SGP's done well to get back here into third place, and Conrad is right up his chuff. These two have had a very good race, to be fair. Dave the Half, I think he'll be very happy with a one-stop in fifth. and being ahead of the pack. As Artpal now comes through the final corner, it'll be 6th place for him. Where's Bunsell gone?
And Hayes pulled up as well. Has there been an incident between Hay and Bunsell potentially?
Possibly. I mean,
yeah, he's letting Bunsell go, isn't he? Something must have happened there.
Oh, you know what? And there's Rich Blues. You know what Rich Blues did? Pit. He did on. Yeah, he had to pit.
Oh yeah.
For that slap of fuel. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that's been a case of, sort of got to the end of lap 14 thinking you've done 15 laps and you've got halfway but not quite calculated it right as Rich Blues crosses the line. But what a race. Yeah, I mean, as we were watching the leaders go over the line there, the pack cam will have been on the pack. We haven't been able to see that, unfortunately. So I can only surmise that something did happen with Bunsell there. Whether Hay was involved or not, I'm not sure, but maybe he felt at least similar situation to perhaps Demon R earlier on, where maybe he wasn't sure, so rather than risk it, made sure that he wasn't going to get a penalty by letting Bunsell through. But a fantastic race there, nevertheless.
Yeah, it's very much two different races going on, wasn't there? The front battle, which was pretty spread out in the end, but the pack battle, yeah, I was really impressed with what we saw in the pack today. I know maybe one or two incidents on the last lap, but aside from that, yeah, I thought on what we said earlier in the commentary was a track where there's potential for a lot of incidents, and overall, apart from one or two individual errors, I thought the racing was very good.
Yeah, definitely. And I can't remember if I finished saying it during the race, but I think that is one of those tracks where what would normally work regarding strategy, for whatever reason, that track did not work today. So, like, the undercut didn't work because of the pack, because of the traffic, because it's a difficult track to overtake, whatever it may be. There are a few that we've gone to that have been like that. And to be fair, I think it was a difficult call for Demon R to pit when he did for the first one. Perhaps hearing the difficulties that SGP was going through, I mean, in hindsight, he should have just followed Steve F1. However, once Demon R had pitted, that choice for Steve F1 to go, right, I'm now going to save fuel and go for a one-stop, that must have been a very difficult decision to make, because had he not been able to get to lap 15, it'd have been up a creek without a paddle.
Yeah, that was the key moment in the race, wasn't it? Demon R pitted. In theory, the two-stop was probably a quicker strategy, but obviously comes with the risk of coming through traffic. And I think once Demon R and SGP lost all that time in the traffic, I think that's when Steve F1 probably realised, yeah, I can just save fuel and go to the end of lap 15 now. And they probably realised then, yeah, he was in a good position.
Definitely. I'm just having a quick look at the pre-race standings. Mitch coming under a little bit of pressure for his third place with him not being able to race today. Conrad and SGP, they're going to be close in the title, not in the title fight, but they're going to be close in the standings. Maybe only 1 or 2 points between them. I think for Dave the Harp, it was crucial that he finished ahead of Artpal in this race to keep that gap between those two. Fluffy, who unfortunately was unable to race today, I think he may have been passed by Gary, but may not have been passed by Twilight. And I think Gary finished ahead of Twilight, if I remember rightly. I could be wrong. But yeah, so if Gary finished ahead of Twilight, then he'll open up a bit of a gap there. But unfortunately for Twilight, it's another race where late on he's been unfortunate, and on this occasion, losing it himself on the curb, it's going to hurt a bit, because he was in a very good position for the whole of that race. A little bit painful for him, that's for certain.
Yeah, I mean, Twilight's in this car has been quick on several occasions. His car, I think he gets on with really well, but as you say, it just seems just bad luck at the end of races, whether it be fuel or incidents or whatever, just he's costing him a little bit. So I'm sure, yeah, he'll just be frustrated with the way. It's also frustrating when things happen at the end of races when you don't have any chance to make amends. But he's just got to keep doing what he's doing, because he's shown good pace on many occasions this season.
Definitely. Jason unable to race today. His position may be safe because with Hay waiting for Bunsell at the end, Hay won't have scored that many points, and there were 6 points between Jason and Hay. Jimmy will have closed the gap up to Hay a bit. Rich Blues, I gotta say, that's Rich's. Well, I was going to say his best race of the championship so far, but actually he did quite well at the Oval. But a much better race from Rich. I think he enjoyed this one a lot more than the first 3 or 4 races, definitely. Just unfortunately ran out of fuel with a lap to... Well, didn't run out of fuel, but realised he didn't have enough fuel for that last lap and had to make a pit stop.
Yeah, I know. He'll be gutted with the result, but I'm sure he'll be at least happy that he's had a good race, because I think the first few races he was probably struggling with the car a little bit. Now he's got on top of it. That's the main thing. You can be in the battle and enjoy the race no matter what. So I'm sure he enjoyed it overall. But yeah, it'll just be. It's always frustrating when you run out of fuel at the end, but it's happened to some of the best drivers this season. So he's in good company. He
definitely is. Bunsell, very good race for Bunsell. In a way, right, I don't know if I'm going to be able to say this without it sounding really wrong, but I mean it in the best of ways. In a way, I hope that Bunsell's really annoyed with how the last lap of the race went for him. And the only reason I mean that is because Bunsell has been working really hard for quite some time now at racing much cleaner, but also racing much cleaner on the last few laps of races. And in a way, the reason I say that I'd like Bunsell to be really annoyed is because he's had a brilliant race here today. He was on for a brilliant result, and unfortunately something happened. I've not seen it, but something's happened. And if he's annoyed, then he'll be able to sit there and go, okay, I get it. I'm now feeling what other people have felt sometimes. And it's really annoying. But that's one of those things that you can use that to learn. It'd be very easy for someone to go through that experience and then go, right, the next one, I don't care. Whereas what we would prefer someone to do with that experience is to go, okay, right, I don't want to make anyone else feel like that, so I'm going to keep working on what I've been doing, because what Bunsell has been improving on, he's been doing really well. I've kind of cursed it now, haven't I? But he has been improving, and it'd be very easy for him to think, and go the wrong way. But I'd much rather him go, you know what? Yes, that wasn't nice. Yes, they've apologised. But I'll use that as I don't want to make other people feel that way in the future. And we work on the positives from that. So, yeah, I hope that came across in the right way.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. Yeah, we see it a lot, don't we, in DG2. There's like fantastic racing for the majority of the race, and then occasionally on the last lap it all goes wrong, and you'd rather get beat on the last lap in a good fight than get beat on the last lap by being punted off. It's a completely different feeling. Yeah. So when you've been in those situations where you get taken off on the last lap, it can be really frustrating. Yeah. So if you can then apply it the other way around when you're in those fights, well, yeah, I don't want to ruin anybody else's race. That's a good thing. Yeah, definitely.
As you people may have noticed, the post-race questions for today's event have been quite an unusual one, random question time, and it got me thinking. There was one of the races a few races ago where Rich asked about like what TV programs people would recommend, and I'm pretty sure I said Oak Island. And I will say this again, if anyone is interested in sort of history, Knights Templars, or what's the other one that's like the Knights Templars? I can't remember, it's gone from my head at the moment. But that kind of like historical era, The Curse of Oak Island is a fantastic programme to watch, and it, over the last few years, has had the potential to change history, and what it could uncover in the next couple of years could change a lot of what is known about the history of people back in the days of the Knights Templar Golden Circle. Is it Knights? Not Knights of the Golden Circle. That's Monty Python. I think. But you know what I mean. In that era, anyway, it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few different programs like that about like Civil War gold or World War II gold and stuff like that. And one was looking at ships in in lakes and in the sea for where treasures may have been lost, like treasures that are supposed to have not existed, but evidence has been found that could show they exist. And there was one recently where divers discovered an old rusty ship shivering at the bottom of the sea. And the spokesman for the crew said it looked like a nervous wreck.
I wonder when the punchline was coming to this.
Now, to be fair, every bit up until that last moment was true. That last bit was, that was the joke. It could be worse though. I missed.
Oh, that was.
Yeah, it's all true, apart from that last bit at the end. Thank you. Although I do feel terrible because a few years ago I missed my girlfriend's funeral after sleeping in. I'm just not a morning person.
You should quit while you were on that one.
Oh no! I've got one more.
Oh my god!
No, I might say no. I'll say no. I'll say.
Go on.
I could do the really bad one, or I could do one that's actually pretty good. Duct tape heist at local bank. Eyewitnesses said, "I've no idea how they pulled that off."
God.
Okay, we'll finish on this one. My neighbour, right, very nice bloke, but keeps playing the same bloody Lionel Richie song on loop. I wouldn't mind, but it was all night long.
Oh no.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I've just remembered there is actually another one. Sorry, my apologies. My granddad was telling me that in the war he had to lie down behind a cow. He didn't get a medal, but he did get a pat on the head. Thank you, Twilight, for that one. Right, okay, that's my jokes done. Right, thank you, Steve, for joining us on commentary.
You're welcome, enjoyed it as always.
Yep, and next up is going to be Sanquar C2, I think, or one of the Sanquars. I'll go into it in more detail in a moment. The last three tracks, though, look like they could be fun ones, as we've now got 3 races to find out who's going to be the Tomahawk Chief. Steve F1 then taking the victory in the maximum 20 points. Demon R finishing in second place, so Steve F1 is going to open that gap up. SGP is going to gain a couple of points on Conrad in the standings, finishing 3rd and 4th respectively. Dave the Heart with a great result, finishing in 5th place, making the one-star work for him. Perhaps dismissing the rumours of him killing tyres. Art Pal, a good result for him in 6th place, 11 points. Gary finished in 7th, so that's 10 points for him. Jimmy in 8th place, 9 points for him. Twilight was unlucky at the end there, 9th place and 8 points. Bunsell finished in 10th place, 7 points for him. That may be enough to raise him from the bottom of the standings. Hay finished in 11th place on 6 points, and Rich Blues was very unlucky. He was in a good position, but a lap short of fuel, meaning a late pit stop. 12th place for him and 5 points, but it did look like he enjoyed his race a hell of a lot more in this one. Okay, let's have a look then at what that has done to the championship standings. And Steve F1 is still leading the way on 104 points, 5 now ahead of Demon R, who's on 99. Mitch still holds on to 3rd place, but only by 3 points to Conrad in 4th. SGP is only 1 point behind Conrad now, so we've got a 3-way battle for what is 3rd place at the moment. Dave the Harp keeps that gap to 10 points between himself and Art Pal. He's actually opened it up a little bit from 9 points to 10 points, and Art Pal, he's now got a 10-point gap over formerly Gary in 8th. Anything could happen between these guys. Twilight has dropped down to Gary, so he's down to 9th place on 40 points, but he's still in the fight for definite. Fluffy still sitting in 10th place, or should I say still sitting there. He's now in 10th place on 38 points. Jason and Hay, they're now tied in 11th place on 31 points. Jimmy is up to 13th on 24 points. Rich Blues 14th on 18 points. Tyler is 15th on 13 points, Bunsell 16th on 12 points, and then SRI is at the bottom. A quick mention as well that there were no reports, so no penalties handed out this week. Well done, guys. Means either no one reported anything or drivers are doing the right things when incidents happen. Either way, it's good stuff this week. As for next week, well, we're at round 7, Sanquhar B2. Good job, I am updating it now because it's not Sanquhar C, it's Sanquhar B2 for 22 laps. It's a very interesting circuit. It looks a bit dull on the track map, but in actual fact, it's a very fast flowing circuit. Maybe a bit of a tyre killer, but also quite a long lap because it's only 22 laps around there. The last 2 rounds, round 8 will be Magyar West and round 9 Sardegna A2, and they are 2 very interesting circuits as well. So it's going to be very interesting to find out what's going to happen across the board, the battle for the title, but also the battle for positions, that battle for 3rd, that battle for 5th, the battle all the way across the board. Well, you know what to do if you want to find out how it's going to go. Please join us next week. Also, feel free to check out the Dynamic GT League merch that is available on Streamlabs. The link is in the description. And there are some new t-shirts available in tribute of 2020 and 2021 with, sorry, I was on mute. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.